for having us.
Great to be here.
Now, first off, I told you there was a gotcha at the beginning of the interview. A listener emailed me and said, "These guys are so big on technology. Why is their book not available on Amazon today?" And there's some problem with the link to your book. And do you know about it?
Wow, that is a gotcha. Yeah, we are aware of it. The Kindle version of our book is currently unavailable. We don't exactly know why, but you can be sure there are people looking into
You
it.
think so?
Yeah.
Are
No,
they
we-
sabotaging you somehow?
No.
Here you are in Seattle. Jeff Bezos, I assume, would be at your presentation. He's also a very big forward thinker. Would you agree?
Yeah, we were just over
Massive.
there yesterday. Yeah, no, we think that the NSA is probably behind this.
Well,
They don't want the information to get out.
Maybe that's true, by the way, for reasons we'll get into. So I would go, I hate BarnesandNoble.com because they're not based right here, but you got to get this book. And maybe go into a bookstore if you can find it.
What
That
is
still
this
works.
thing?
We are
That still
assured
works.
the
All right.
Kindle version will be back up soon, so
Okay.
hold tight, Seattle.
The paper version still works.
All right, so I gave this book my highest recommendation, even though I'm maybe just a chapter or so into it, because I love telling stories. And the way you start this story is incredible. So I'm going to just hand this off to you guys because you can tell it. But you start by looking at all of humanity from 60,000 BC to 35,000 BC when we've pretty much wiped out Cro-Magnon and its Homo sapiens. And then you start talking about an era from 800 to 200 BC where our deepest philosophical thinkers, people who still matter today, happen. And you go through agriculture, we have the ox, we learn how to have animals do more work than we can do as human beings, and it turns into factories and all this. And then all of a sudden the computer happens, and the curve of how fast things change steepens dramatically. So that's the setup. So that's the premise of your book is hang on tight, we're in a roller coaster ride, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way we start the book is with the all-time favorite question that I ask when I'm having dinner with friends or having beer with buddies. A great question is, what do you
What kind
think
of dinosaur did Jesus drive?
No.
That's the second best question.
That's a,
Okay,
he's
I now
got
have
an armband for that.
I have a
Yeah.
new favorite question, but is to ask, what do you guys think have been the biggest stories in human history? And then you just sit back because an endless debate is going to break out, and you'll get people talking about Julius Caesar and the Roman Empire, and then the Alexander the Great was a much bigger deal. No, you guys are ignoring philosophy and democracy, and you're ignoring calculus and the invention of zero. That debate will just go forever. What's really interesting is that if you take a geek's view of history, the answer is, well, let's draw a graph and see what the graph looks like. And it turns out you can actually draw these geeky graphs of human history because we've quantified some aspects of it. We've quantified for thousands of years how many people are there on the planet. There's also a guy named Ian Morris here on the West Coast who's done amazing work to try to put into numbers how advanced our civilizations
Right,
were.
the advancement of civilization.
Social development. It turns out it doesn't matter which of those numbers you choose because the graphs look exactly the same. They are incredibly boring for thousands of years. So
Right.
Jesus, Buddha, Confucius, Caesar, Alexander the Great, Genghis Khan, they don't move the needle. They don't bend the graph at all.
Fred Flintstone to old Europe.
Agriculture.
It
Dark
moves
Ages.
super slow.
Barely a blip.
Barely a blip. I mean, we're still basically, our technology doesn't change. There
Until-
are no cable channels.
Until Charlie
There's no-
Sheen.
Until-
Then
Until-
Charlie
Dun,
Sheen.
dun, dun.
Then-
Something big
Right.
happened.
Right.
And that thing is Perez Hilton. No,
I'm looking right now.
Get a better joke. You did.
and what happened was, seriously, the Industrial Revolution and the story of overcoming the limitations of our muscle power via steam and these other technologies. When you keep drawing that graph, it goes from boring and horizontal to boom, incredibly interesting and vertical.
All of a sudden now, things are changing so fast. And you talk about some of the things that's going to affect. For example, it's been in the news lately, the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. We're headed towards Hunger Games if we don't do something about it, aren't we?
Well, if we don't do something about it is a key point because we don't see any particular future as being inevitable, either the good futures that we paint or the bad futures. One of the reasons we have 3 chapters of recommendations in there is that we think that we have an enormous ability to influence which tack the future takes.
But we can't deny the fact, and we spent a lot of time on it, that inequality is on the rise, social mobility is heading in the wrong direction. There are these challenges that we're facing, not just in the U.S., around the world, and part of why we wrote the book is to say that technology is one of the driving forces for that.
The word algorithm, I would like you to define it for people because I've only recently, in the last few years, it's become part of my lexicon that a lot of what we do and a lot of what is presented to us and a lot of how companies perceive risk and reward is based on this thing called algorithms. And even though some of us had basic grade school, we had that word. It's come just like computer used to be a word for a person who added up numbers, and now it's something else. What does algorithm mean to us in today's world?
It's a defined set of steps that lead to a specific outcome that ultimately finish. And much of the work we do today can be reduced to an algorithm. And there are super smart people here in Seattle, at MIT, in Silicon Valley that are working on codifying human work, turning it into algorithms or processes. And once they do that, once they codify it, they can digitize it. And if a process becomes digitized, you can make a copy of it. In fact, you can make 10 copies of it. You can make 100 million copies of it at almost zero cost.
And the really crazy part is that we used to think up until pretty recently that there was a lot of stuff that we humans did that you could not algorithmicize. You could not turn into an algorithm.
And I'm romantic, and I still think that. So but before you get to the example I know you're going to get to, let me say this. Algorithms brought us some subprime mortgages not having any risk. Don't we take a huge risk when we rely on algorithms to do all our driving for us, that maybe there's some unforeseen consequence down the road, if you will. So what do you
Absolutely.
say?
No, one of the dangers is that if the algorithm is bad, then when you make 100 million copies of it, that's even worse. It could multiply the problems. But the opportunity is to spend more time refining it and doing it more carefully.
Hopefully keep getting better. All right, Andrew. You're Andrew, right? Andrew, you're going to tell us about something you didn't believe was possible, just to show how fast things are changing, a couple of years ago.
Yep. So just about 10 years ago, some colleagues of ours wrote a wonderful book where they tried to say, here's the stuff that people are good at, here's the stuff that machines are good at, not just at one point in time, not just in 2004, but for a long time going forward. Honestly, Exhibit A in their list of stuff that people are pretty good at and machines are horribly bad at was driving a car in traffic. And they said it can't be put into an algorithm. There's too much information to take in. The rules are fuzzy. They change all the time. The risks are too high if you get something wrong. Not going to happen. A couple summers ago, Eric and I went for a ride down Highway 101 in Northern California in a car that had no driver.
And this is with Google. And you were researching this book, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so
we wanted to see it for real.
You got in a car that drives itself in some of the worst traffic in America. As scientists, sort of semi-believing that that's not possible. Were you scared?
I was really scared, actually. What you were talking about, the bad traffic. The Highway 101 is supposed to be a highway. The traffic came to a dead stop right in front of us. The car in front of us was completely stopped in the middle of the road, and we're sitting there in our driverless car grabbing the handrails thinking, oh my God, does it realize that the car in front of us is stopped in the middle of the highway? Now, we're still here today, so yes, it did come to a nice, smooth stop.
And you said it even kind of drove better than people.
Well, at first, we were terrified. And just like you'd imagine if this were a sci-fi movie, there was honestly a big red button in the middle of the dashboard. And the Google engineer driving the car just went bump and took his hands off the wheel, and we were in a self-driving car.
The red button turned on the self-driving.
Got it.
And that
turns
was
off the human being.
It wasn't
turns
the
off
eject
the
button.
human. It was
By the way, in the future, then we'll be able to text and drive. We'll be able to watch movies on the way to work.
Yeah, in the future. In the future.
Not this morning.
in the not too distant future.
But again, isn't there a danger? Like now, if there is an accident, how badly does the company that made that algorithm get sued?
I take the other side of that because there are 30,000 deaths right now with human drivers. And I seriously doubt that these self-driving cars are going to have anywhere near that level.
So as long as it's better than human beings, in court they will win.
What we saw
That's
riding
a different question.
No, I think the insurance companies are going to demand it because these cars, what we rode in them, after we were scared, then the next phase we were kind of thrilled. We were waving at the people and saying, "Hey guys, look at us driving car." But most of the ride, all the way, it was an hour and a half up to San Francisco and back down to Mountain View. Most of the time, honestly, we were bored. It was a little bit like watching a dishwasher run. It was just so smooth and so comforting because we got a sense that this car knew exactly what it was doing. Better than most Boston taxi drivers, that's for sure.
That's not a very high bar, though.
I figured that the hobbyists will still have cars that drive themselves, but most cars will be self-driving.
And those hobbyists will probably have to pay higher insurance.
Yeah, it'll
Not
be
too
like
distant
having
future.
having something out on the roads. It'd be a great time to own bars, too, because you can drink all you want.
It'll be like off-roading, absolutely. There'll be a few people who do that just for kicks, but in terms of getting your job done, self-driving
Now,
cars.
one fundamental question about technology, it seems like everything is going towards where you need less people. You don't need a guy to drive your car. You have robots that can assemble things, yet the world's population continues to grow. We're having more people on the planet and less things for them to do. How are we going to